Welcome to the Trailblazers. I'm Perry Rarick, your host. The purpose of this interview series is to share with you interesting discussions I have with trailblazing business leaders. They're innovative, thought-provoking, they're not afraid to challenge the status quo, and they serve as catalysts for positive transformation. Joining us on the Trailblazers today is my good friend, Janette Buechler. She's a senior marketing executive who has consistently driven significant revenue growth in the complex B2B life sciences space. As a vital member of the executive team at Pharmatech Associates, she served during a number of key leader transitions, ownership changes, and an acquisition. Very tough times when those things are happening regularly. And she operates in a way that is near and dear to me with a customer-centric approach. Welcome to the Trailblazers, Janette.
Thank you so much, Perry. I've known each other for such a long time. It's really fun to do this with you, and I appreciate the invitation to chat with you today.
Well, thank you for your time. It's great to have you. So, Janette, we've known each other for quite a while. And when I first met you, you were serving as an as an administrative assistant at Pharmatech Associates. And when you recently left there, you were the head of marketing. That's quite a journey. And so I think there are a lot of interesting lessons for our audience in that story. So would you mind sharing some of the high points and some of the things you learned throughout that journey?
Sure. I mean, I think about it often, actually, because it was quite quite a journey, quite a number of roles, like you said, with several different leaders. But when I was first initially brought in, it was really to address what was happening at the company at the time. When it came to a lot of executives were traveling, they needed to move the office to a bigger space, um, and just really kind of get everybody organized. And so that's why I came in at that moment. They needed an executive admin, and it kind of morphed into marketing coordination and doing a little bit more outreach and work within the trade shows. There became a need to really get out there in the community, among the peers, to really develop more business. And it became apparent that it was easy for me to engage customers in those opportunities, along with some of the engineers and SMEs that we would exhibit together. There were some things I could teach them that were just inherent to my personality, which is very different than really a scientist or somebody that might be a little bit more analytical. So really built that program from that point and kind of launched into doing more marketing roles. Um, One of the things that stands out the most, I think, over the years is one of the CEOs I had would have a brilliant idea, call me into his office, share it, and give me, 2 minutes to respond to this idea. And the next words from him were, "Make it so." And I would just, "Okay, make it so. How do I make it so?" It might be something I've never done before and had to really get on there and research and figure it out. But I think over time of doing that, I was able to develop confidence and as well as and instill in him confidence in me that I can kind of figure things out, take things in a direction. And I think when you're in that environment, it really helps develop a person's skills in a way that maybe would not happen if specific instructions were given to me. Make it so. I mean, there's a lot of options to make something so, but that those words have stuck with me, over the years when it comes to trying new things, and so the role kind of just developed from there based on the needs of the company and expanded into really creating of a mix of clients, versus, you know, uh, a current client base from a company that's been established to having to bring in really a new funnel of business and, all of that outreach. Uh, and so really it just developed from there. It was really a combination of, gaining more confidence and earning trust at the same time, really from the leadership.
I've known you throughout that time that you took that journey, and every time I would speak with you, you were doing something new. Something else was added to your plate of responsibilities, and so it occurred to me, it's almost like when you know, when there was a problem, I don't want to overstate that, but there was a problem or a challenge that the company was having, you kind of saw it as an opportunity and you jumped right in. And how do you, so you want to talk a little bit about that? How did you approach these problems that way?
I think I was genuinely, really wanted to help the company. So I would look internally, what skills do I have that I could offer to this problem and not really be afraid to just, raise my hand and offer it up or just take the initiative to do things. And I think that's probably the key there is to, sometimes you just have to try things, but you do have to stick your neck out a little bit and take the initiative. If you hear of a need, volunteer. And then really that's how you learn and expand your skills. But you have to try and you have to really take the initiative and kind of look for things. Look for places in the company where you can offer support, where you can offer expertise. Ask if they're willing to shadow somebody along with something where maybe you can learn a little bit, and then next time it comes around, you could be the person to kind of jump on and take on that project. So I think that's one of the things that really helped.
Uh, so I probably should inform our audience, the audience that may not be aware of what or who Pharmatech Associates is, but it's an engineering consultancy in the life sciences space for drug development and some medical device development as well. And a lot of consultants or consultant organizations, the consultants are responsible for business development. They're out there and they're responsible for generating more business. So when you first joined Pharmatech Associates, that's the way it was. You're leaving there with a very robust uh, marketing program and a sales team. So how did that get started?
That's a great question. I can recall a time being at the first trade show. I was there with a team of engineers and the founder of the company. And me being who I am, I'm in the aisles there saying hello to everybody that walked by. That's step one, right? How do you get traffic to your booth? Say hello. The next step was really to ask the person if they'd ever been to this show before. And I learned that from a salesperson that I used to work with. It was really just the simplest questions that were able to engage people. And so I would get a conversation started and immediately introduce them to one of my colleagues who was standing at the booth with me. They would begin chatting, and I'd move on to the next person, say hello, introduce myself, and introduce them to the next, engineer or senior leader of the company who was there with me. And that was really the approach that we took for a very long time. And at one point, they'd asked me to do some training more formally with folks who wanted to be exhibitors. They wanted to get out to the trade shows and see what it was like. And I really realized at that point that there's a comfort level with people, but there's also some basic skills when it comes to personal space. Um, personal space, that was one of the things that was part of the training is you really how close is too close when you're meeting a stranger. And that sounds so simple, but not everybody is aware in the same way. And then we realized even more, we did the training, but there were still people that were more comfortable in that role. And so why not use the strengths of everybody on the team, right? If I can be strong in that area, I'm happy to stand there all day and say hello to everybody. And I'll introduce them to at one time, I remember we had I had 9 team members with me. And it was really the most fun for me to just find somebody else to talk to, bring them over and introduce them to my really great team. And I sincerely felt that I had true experts with me. And so it was really easy for me to make those introductions. But I think the key is really capitalizing on the strengths that your team has. And if people are put into if situations are too uncomfortable, it's hard to be successful in that way, right? So I could do the ice breaking and they can do the get into the nitty-gritty, talk about the problems and get into the solutions, which is really where they want to be. And I think that that dual approach kind of became even more and more the way we were operating, to the point where people were trained. We also found people who were really well suited to do that. And that's how we were able to make the most out of the shows we did go to when it came to, those kind of industry networking events.
So that got the whole ball rolling, that scenario at the trade show. And from there, though, you developed a very robust content marketing program. Essentially, all of your experts, your subject matter experts, were contributing content to various business publications and platforms out there. You eventually were purchasing media. You had paid media program and all of that, but it all started at the trade show. So as you saw these opportunities to go beyond that trade show win, how did you get the support of the executive level at Pharmatech Associates?
So at the end of each year, if we get kind of to the beginning on on how that progressed, I would look at the budget each year and take a look at the things that we did the previous year that really took off. And being a small company, every dollar we're spending in marketing has to have some kind of an impact. And we're all often taking from one pot and putting it into the other, but we really wanted to support those programs that seem to take on some traction. And so I would propose with my new budget, November, December, here is my proposed budget. I'd like to put more emphasis here, and this is why. And I would actually have a story laid out as to why I would make this choice over doing something over here, whether it's, cutting out some SEO work and taking on some PR at a larger event. Because this would have been closer to a paycheck, is the way I like to look at it, versus something that might be a little bit more long term. It just depends on the pot that I had and how I had to divide it up. But each year, really capitalizing on the thing that really took hold. And it was really incremental changes, no big swings. It's okay, let's do this, let's do more of this next year. And then the next year would build upon that. So it really had to progress that way. And that way the leadership can see, they can see the results, they can see how many contacts were made. Um, they can see the amount of engagement that came from a video that I might have had decided to, spend some money on. And so it's really consciously trying things, seeing how well they did, and paying attention to that so that I can promote it, or promote it to the leadership the following year. And then actually the budget just increased year after year based on those types of results.
Measuring results. It comes right down to that sometimes. Really good. Very valuable. So you already mentioned that you wanted to get as much as you could out of it, every dollar spent. And you ran a lean operation, and sometimes that has a negative connotation. That means we're going to work really hard and we're not going to add any more people. But you did run a very efficient operation with a lot of external support that you brought in as needed. Can you talk a little bit about that external system, that network, that organization that you had, and then how you developed that over time?
Sure. So I ran as a single individual, an entire outsourced marketing department. And the way I did that was really took the time to select some amazing vendors. And in doing that, over the years, those vendors really came through for me in so many ways. Um, Beyond just doing a Google search and finding a printer, I would get to know this individual and also know a little bit about their service offerings, the type of customer that's ideal to them, so that I can in turn refer business. And what it created was a mutually beneficial relationship that's really sincere, to the point where I have in this vendor group, I can pick up the phone to any of them and talk about a different program I'd like to do and get their opinion on it. What do you think of this? So they became really resources that went beyond just the initial thing that I was hiring them for. But what I would say is it's really worth taking the time to find the great team because they will help you in the end. And the other part was to really set high expectations for the projects I was doing for them. And the reason why is as a small company, again, whatever bucket I had to use towards that project, I really had to make it the best it could be. So how do I do that? If I give them a context of why I might need something printed and shipped like tomorrow and why it has to look a certain way, is that was the only way. I mean, when you're small, you're trying to get, you know, somebody else who might be a small company. I mean, sometimes it had to be a priority what I was doing. But I would also send business to them over the years, and so it just became a relationship that, that grew from there. Um, the other thing I would say is you have to kind of have some what am I trying to say? You have to be sincere in wanting to help other people when you're working with a team of outsourced, group because and I think over time, they became the best at what they can do for me. Whether it was I talk about printing all the time because I do have a printer that has done so much more for me in marketing than print. I'm trying to buy a booth from another vendor, for example, and I would send it to him and say, "What do you think of this? Does this company gonna produce something of quality? What do you know of them?" And even though they weren't giving me the direct, my business wasn't going to them directly, he would still offer his advice. But in return, he's been my resource for over 10 years. So, take the time to really get to know them, know what they offer. And I ask a direct question. I'll say, "Tell me who your ideal client is." And then as I'm out doing my thing at Pharmatech, I keep my ears and eyes open for people that might be a good client for them. Um, and that's, whether it's an agency, whether it's your SEO people. Um, The other thing, though, I would say before deciding to outsource something is really give it a try on your own. And if you determine that it takes too much time or it's not really your skill set, it's not coming out quite the way you want it, then you make a determination on what you want to outsource to because what will end up happening, especially if you like making graphics, is that the best use of time for me as a one person department? And we had a coach at one point, a great guy who I worked with when I moved into an executive position. And I met with him every couple of weeks, and he had me write something on a sticky note. And it was, "Is this the best use of Janette's time?" And he had me stick it on my screen. And it really helped me make decisions on, you know what, I really need to outsource this. This is taking me 4 hours, and I should be looking at the CRM. I should be creating it, you know, emails. I can't be doing this for one little piece of, visual graphic. So that was a really key piece of advice that I learned from him is, you know, "Is this the best use of my time? And if it's not, now go out and find, the best person to do it for me."
That's really valuable advice. That what you described is not a transactional relationship. This is a a number of business partnerships, multiple business partnerships that you have through this external network that you develop over time. I've been a part of that at times. And to use your words, I felt it was mutually beneficial. I
Yeah.
received a lot from that in those discussions with you, and a lot of well, I would describe a lot of them as problem solving sessions that we engaged in. So they were very valuable. That's really wonderful. Um, and so something else you said in there that I want to circle back around to is you would try this first to kind of figure out how hard it is and whether it's a good use of your time. What would be an example? Could you offer an example of something that you tried, you decided, boy, I need to outsource this?
I have a simple example. A lot of marketing folks use Canva, and it's a really user-friendly tool to create graphics. Um, and during COVID, when we first went through this lockdown period, I would learn how to use it, and I was creating graphics. And somebody like me can spend all day changing the color of something. I could give it color schemes all day long. And as much as I was good at it, it was fun, I had to really realize as a leader in marketing, I have things that are a little bit higher of a priority. I can't get down this rabbit hole of creating a graphic piece. And so that was one that I could immediately outsource. And then other things, we don't all have every skill needed to do things at the level that I was expecting. So whether it's blog writing, especially for something technical, I want it to be an easy process for my SMEs. And so that's when I sought out a person who could really ask the right questions from our folks to help create blogs for them quickly, because it couldn't be a drawn out process of too much thinking, too much time from taking time from them. So sometimes I had to streamline things because of time. Other times it was just really looking for an expert who could be better than I. Uh, Also SEO, when it comes to that whole field, the algorithms change every single week. And to stay up to date, to be able to do the best job you can, sometimes you really need an expert in there. Um, but one thing I would definitely say is, as a person who's outsourcing these elements of marketing, you need to have enough as a marketer, you need to know what good is. And the only way to know what good is to try it, do it, and learn it. And now you can evaluate the work of someone else and be able to really pull together the best stuff. Without that knowledge, it's really something that you can't manage. Um, so that goes back to trying it first, learn first. And also, for me, I would spend time practicing different techniques outside of the workday, just other projects that might be related to whether it's writing, whether it's graphics, whether it's trying different things on social media. I'd find other experimental ways to learn and practice, and that helped me also when it came to managing some of the outsourced resources when I had to make decisions when things weren't working. Um, you have to be able to see that and be able to act on it, and the only way really is to have the knowledge on your own first.
Great stuff. That's really good stuff. So I want to get a little more specific with some advice. So, and I have several groups. So I still run into people who are in this space. This space is characterized, at least the sales cycle of this space is, if I had to characterize it, very long sales cycles, a lot of trust building that needs to be done for somebody a drug developer to reach out to a consultant that's going to establish a new manufacturing facility for them. That's not a transactional, to bring that term back. That's not a transactional relationship. Takes time. I still run into folks in this marketers in this space who are like, I don't need to worry about that buyer's journey. When they show up, I'll be ready to sell them. What would you tell them?
Well, there's so much that marketing could do to make that moment easier and more successful for that salesperson. So, what I would say is, why not put some programs into place so that the trust is building and the door will be open when that time comes, and they'll be receptive to you. Um, there's so many great tools out there. I have a lot of experience with HubSpot. Probably there's another one called Pipedrive. You can set up a program so that the company is engaging with you, this individual is engaging with your company, because a sales cycle could be 9 months, 12 months, especially when it comes to new customers developing a trust relationship with a consultancy. Trust is earned, it's not given. And I I think eh, one of the other things that's kind of important for marketers right now. I was just at a conference for about early in November, and we have to assume that our buyers have already done 70% of the research before they even come to us. In fact, yesterday I heard from someone it's more like 83% of the decision is made before they come knocking straight on our door. So we need to create content that's kind of in the middle of the funnel to help our buyers make decisions, right? They don't the brand is out there, the background, they can Google anybody, but what is gonna help them make decisions? Things like checklists or quick guides, things that have really key considerations for some of the challenges they're facing. We wanna put that out there in a way that helps what we call nurture the customer along their journey, because there is a period of time where they're gonna have to make a decision, and they're gonna go to the person that they've been reading about, they've been hearing about. I mean, nobody wants emails from strangers. Nobody's gonna open those things. I mean, if we think of it in terms of being a consumer ourselves, it kinda gives you the perspective of what it's like to be the buyer and put yourself in their shoes. I'm not gonna open an email from somebody I don't even know, let alone I've heard of. I think people are even more skeptical today. They're also more knowledgeable because they can do their own searching. So I have actually an example. When I set up a program, it actually took about 9 touch points for an individual who was completely cold, came in from a webinar, didn't it was first time he signed up for something, and we fed them. We provided different bits of content. None of it was sales related except for maybe one leave behind informational flyer. The rest was additional webinars that might meet their needs based on the customer segment. That's the other important part is if you look at your customers by the product, by their title, and really try to segment things so that what they do get is of interest to them, because otherwise they're not going to look at it. Their time is being wasted, and people are they're attuned to that now. So we can really be more sincere with the buyers and set up programs that will make those first introductions go on a more positive direction, for a person's company because the pre-work's been done. And
Yeah, that's so good. I'm sorry I cut you off there.
no
You
problem.
were gonna something you said in there though is help the buyer make decisions. I think that's so rich, that statement right there.
Yes. One of the things that I'm a proponent of, especially when it comes to the content, is it's really important to segment your audience so that your stuff is targeted to their needs. And that would be every product and the customer type. So there's a lot of work up front that needs to be done in order to accomplish this, but it won't be time wasted because now they are going to be, you're going to gain their interest, but you're also going to educate them along the way. And then when their need arises, it's kind of a puzzle piece that's going to fit right together. Um, and, statistically, especially with the skepticism that's just out there in the world, with internet and data security and all this, people, they're just not going to open emails from people they don't know. So you really have to reach at them really from a more place of trying to educate them, give them information that will help them kind of move their process forward based on where they are in their research, right? Because we're all doing it. We're all on the internet all day long, getting our own information before we contact any salesperson.
Yeah, so true. Something you told me once that stuck with me is nobody wants to hear from someone they don't know, and everything that you're speaking about makes you known.
Wow.
Yeah, and kind of helps people be more open to speak with you.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many ways to do it and so many tools. Um, and especially for a small company that's got limited resources, something that might be a consideration to them is if they do something like a webinar or they do have somebody who's maybe written one article, is to try to really take that content and use it for multiple purposes to sort of feed their campaigns. And that's one way to kind of stretch not only the budget, but especially your SME's time and resources for a company that might be smaller. Trying to really launch into a social media program, for example. You don't have to really create everything individually. You can actually take some really good content and parse it out in ways that make sense based on the customer you're trying to reach, and kind of develop a program uh, based on that.
I want to switch a little bit to another group of folks who are part of our audience, which would be somebody a little earlier in their career. They find themselves in B2B marketing and sales, and they may have not even known that this existed prior to that. What kind of advice would you offer them? Professional development and personal development advice.
I would say one of the best things that made a difference for me was to find people in your similar industry and see if you can either, I mean, it's really looking for a mentor, but it doesn't even have to be an official mentor. Find people that have a role that you might be interested in one day and maybe follow them on social media. Go to where they might be speaking. If there's any trade events that are pertinent to your industry, for me, it was actually ISPE and getting involved as a volunteer through Women in Pharma. And that led to me getting to meet lots of senior leaders who were ahead of me in career 5 years, 10 years, and really learning from them, asking questions when the opportunities arise. Um, and in groups like that, usually people are very willing to share tips, advice, but you can also seek out different types of forums where they're talking about career development. Um, I would say having advocates is another way to help your career move along, especially within your own company. You know, being an advocate for others. Um, I actually had an employee tell me that in his whole career, uh, I always kind of helped him carve a space for himself by just, being a positive uh, influence in the day, right? So there's ways to give in both directions, I think. But I would say look for a senior leader, go to where they're speaking, and just you learn from others, being willing to listen, probably talk less, listen more, they always tell us. Um, it always pays out in the long run, and always help the other guy too, because you never know where you can make an impact in someone else. And then it helps you learn as you go along. I think just that whole concept of building a network, especially among your in your trade, depending on if you're an engineer or a scientist. There's so many really great associations. Um, and to stretch your skills a bit, I would definitely recommend volunteering in those organizations. I've met many people I've watched grow throughout their career they were initially volunteering to take time people that are on a panel with their stopwatch, right? They were just out of college. And they're like, "Yeah, I'll do that." Next thing you know, they're leading a committee somewhere. Uh, so you never know, but there's lots to learn along the way and people willing to share and kind of help you do that if you just reach out.
Awesome, awesome advice. So in the life sciences space, there are a lot of conferences and trade shows, but I've always thought that marketers, I don't want to say it's a lonely job, but you can be a little insulated because the only marketing people you come in contact with are in your organization. And so you get a little insulated from some of the other things that are going on. You recently went to a conference of marketers, and you had some really interesting takeaways from that.
That was really an amazing week for me. It was the first time I actually went to a full 3-day conference with only marketing people. I've been to webinars, I've been to shorter events, but this was 3 days. And some of the information that I got from that, which thought was so key, these people, some of the sessions I went to, one might have been only on emails, one was on webinars. And what was it's like one of the things they were saying about webinars are, I thought this was kind of interesting, is what's in and what's out. Apparently, the word webinar is out, but the word live event is in. So, this concept of a little tip like that, of changing some of the way you're thinking about things. That can only come from an industry event of marketers, right? And these people are looking for ways to be different and innovate every single day, right? Because we're trying to stay ahead. We're trying to put our clients ahead of their competition. Um, but when he told me that, I thought, all right, that's key. So forget webinars. Let's talk about live events. Let's talk about just on demand events. Changing that up and using also different terminology in the subject line of your emails. You know, things like quick guides, roadmaps. Here's a roadmap for you. Here's a tip sheet. Here's a cheat sheet. These are words that kind of inspire action. And it's also something you can title your piece that you're offering to your customer to help them make decisions. Why not give me a roadmap? I want a roadmap. I want a quick guide. Yes, I do. And that's something that we actually had done. So I was a little bit progressive that I actually created quick guides for a conference 2 weeks ago because I had a similar thought. But it's those tricks and ideas that come from industry experts. You really can just get that, in those shows. And those were the two that stood out to me was because we're all doing webinars. We've been doing webinars since COVID. But why not call it on-demand event, live event? Forget the word webinar.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Webinar kind of invokes a yawn from a lot of folks.
Yes, it means we have to sit there for an hour and listen to something coming at you one way. Um, yeah, a lot of things in terms of making these programs more interactive, using tools for questions, a lot of interactive audience. I know there's some folks that'll use surveys, where the screen was, live question and answer. Anytime you can get people to interact in a setting like this creates more engagement. Otherwise, you're right. They're yawning, thinking about lunch, tired of sitting. But it's just the creativity that comes from an industry conference of marketers. It was amazing to me. I enjoyed every single moment. There was so much to gain. The concept of the funnel and what type of content we want to give our customers in this decision-making concept. Um, they described that as middle of the funnel content. I thought that was really a key takeaway as well. People are already going to figure out who we are because they're going to just type us into Google. That's the first thing that's going to happen. Second thing is they're going to look us up on LinkedIn. So even though people maybe don't belong or they think they don't belong on LinkedIn or they don't want to do that or they're not for social media, I actually have seen, I noticed this just this week, people even in construction that are working in the trades are actually sharing their company's content on LinkedIn. They themselves barely have a profile, but they've been directed to put, amplify content that our company's putting out, and people like that are getting into it and doing it. So, it's there, and we have to be a part of it. And there's a lot of fun ways to do that without, getting into too much uncomfortable space. Um, just really helping people share your expertise in the world and finding ways to help other people. Um, and I've appreciated, we talk about problem solving Perry all the time. That's because it was me and my four walls and my team that was all out in the world. So always appreciated that.
I did too. I always enjoyed those discussions. Something you said about the funnel, middle of the funnel, early funnel, or what I like to call the buyer's journey, early and middle stages of the buyer's journey. That content's very different than the self-promotional. I do this. You're talking. You mentioned the guides, the checklist. That's helpful information. That's not about the seller.
Right. Right. I think there's a statistic out there that 80% of the content should be educational and 20% promotional. So how does that really play out when you look at a calendar over the year? Um, the best way that I think about that is to think about how I get information when I'm doing a search for something as a consumer. I really want to, if I go on a search, I don't want to look at ads. I want to look at uh, maybe somebody else's website that's giving me the how-to, giving me a little bit more meat that I can educate myself so that I can make a better decision. If I'm wanting this, we're all consumers and as marketers, we're also on the other side of the coin. Um, the guides, and also even if you think about leave behinds, if you think about what you give people at a trade show, there was a time where nobody wants flyers, everybody wants email. Email it to me. But guides that are small, that are something somebody could put in their drawer that might have. We did one thing one time that had to do the cost of different regulatory filings, for example, an estimate of cost, whatever type of filing that somebody was looking for. And so we created it was like a cheat sheet. And it was like a, I would say half of a 5 by 7 page, odd sized thing. It was a little bit laminated. And we were handing those out. Would you like a quick guide on regulatory filings? Well, who wouldn't want that? And they would keep it. Um, so it's really providing things that educate the audience. Um, Cheat sheets, the other word that I've seen. Let's see, quick guide is used all the time. Checklists, roadmap. Roadmaps is another one that's very handy, especially when somebody's got a process to go through and there's going to be sort of lots of different turns, to get to the end. Kind of showing them that it becomes a reference piece.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Just great, great advice. Awesome. I love the cost of regulatory filing. Such a great idea. Who, to your words, who wouldn't want that? That's great.
I mean, you would not going to probably throw it away if you're a person that's going to have to deal with that space.
Yeah.
Another one that I did was pitfalls and considerations that had to do with continuous manufacturing type projects when it came to like strategy, raw materials, equipment, and so on. And it was, again, an odd size piece of paper, but it was a little bit thick and a little bit glossy. And it's a bit of information. Somebody took the time to collect this all and put it in one place. It saves people from having to do their own research. That was another one that was popular. The same concepts, really educating people so they can make decisions.
Yeah. Just great advice. Well, Janette, thank you very much for joining us on the Trailblazers. You have such a great story. I never get tired of hearing of your journey at Pharmatech Associates and all of what you accomplished there in that time. If somebody wants to contact you, how can they reach out to you?
Really, LinkedIn's the best way. I love connecting folks in my network, and I love to be connected. So anyone can reach out to me straight away through LinkedIn, and happy to chat. And if anyone has, questions or challenges about what they're kind of facing in terms of maybe bringing a program to their leadership or how to tackle, uh, kind of take a look at something a little bit differently in their marketing program, happy to connect and chat with anybody.
Great. Thank you very much. Janette Buechler has been my guest today. Just a great amount of value that you've shared with our audience. Thank you very much, Janette.
Thank you so much for having me, Perry.